do a discussion what faith got to do with COVID-19. And we have with us tonight Elder James Blake, the pastor of the Fisher Memorial United Holy Church, and Dr. Cornelius Battle, who is the pastor of the Ebenezer Missionary Baptist Church. Dr. Washington will be joining us soon. He is traveling and he is en route to his hotel and will be getting on. But again, thank you all. We want to discuss tonight how faith and spirituality are and should be intertwined in the battle against COVID in the African American community. Rather than me take the time, I'm going to let Dr. Battle introduce, give more of his history, and talk about what he has done with during COVID and with his church and through the community. And then Elder Blake, if you will follow Dr. Battle.
Okay. My name is Cornelius Battle, and one of the things that we've been doing as relates to the COVID, we actually had a responsible vaccination clinic at the church, months back, and I think there were 200 people that actually that came through for that. And so that was one of the things that we wanted to do practically as it relates to the COVID-19. I am the pastor of the Ebenezer Missionary Baptist Church, which is located on 2200 South Austin Avenue, which is about 0.8 miles from North Carolina Central University. I have been pastoring there for 22 years. Also, I was the moderator of New Hope Missionary Baptist Association, which consists of 42 missionary Baptist churches in Durham and vicinity. My background, undergraduate in electronics engineering technology. I also ran a business for several years and then was called into the ministry. And so moved to Durham in 1999, where I've been pastoring here with the Ebenezer Missionary Baptist Church. My philosophy in terms of ministry is that faith is out, works is dead. We have to put the work behind the faith that we profess that we have. And the scripture tells us, what does the Lord require of thee but to do justice, love mercy, and to walk humbly with thy God. So I'm about, creating ministries that transform the community for the better so that people can maximize their full possibilities and potential, and that we stay and be in community, which is a word I think some of you may know called Ubuntu, meaning there's an African word that we are in community with each other, that I cannot become what I'm capable of becoming until you can become what you're capable of becoming. So all of us are in this thing together. And there's an old, I think Ghanaian Proverbs that said, when spider webs unite, they can tie up a lion. So I'm part of this spider webs as we come together to deal with this COVID-19. And I appreciate the opportunity to be on and to be a part of this roundtable tonight.
Good evening, everyone. My name is James Blake. I serve as the senior pastor of the Fisher Memorial United Holy Church here in the city of Durham. We are located at 420 East Piedmont Avenue, right in the heart of downtown area of Durham and the Hayti Heritage Center, Phoenix Square, and a few blocks from the North Carolina Central University campus. Certainly, we have been impacted by COVID-19, and even in the early stages of COVID-19, we wanted to take an active part in helping our community to navigate COVID-19. So we certainly participated in many of the strategy sessions that went on as it related to how does the church respond to COVID, and how does the church and the community work together to get useful information into the community about COVID-19, and at that time, the coming vaccinations and how those would impact our community, particularly the African American community as we were more greatly affected by COVID-19 and some of the things that were going on in our communities with already health disparities, and now the introduction of COVID-19 as a part of that. So as a church, we also in the summer of 2020 participated in a food giveaway to ensure that those who may be food challenged would also have an opportunity to get some additional foods, some fresh fruits and vegetables that were given away each Friday for a period of about 6 weeks. We took part in that, and we distributed food to the community in that way, certainly protecting ourselves, but certainly wanted to make sure that our community was being served. We also continued in our food bank giveaway, which is every Wednesday from 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. Our food bank distributes food to those who are in need in the community, and we work diligently to make sure that our volunteers are kept safe and they're masked up and they're making sure that they're following all COVID procedures, but we certainly wanted to make sure that we were still present in the community. We also served as a vaccination station. And so we partnered, I hate to say this, Duke, but we partnered with the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill to get some shots in arms, and they certainly were done that there at Fisher Memorial. And so we were happy to be able to do that and actually get some more people vaccinated in the Durham area. And we have plans even now that we will be participating in a over-the-counter drug giveaway on December the 4th at Fisher Memorial United Holy Church. And so we've been working diligently to make sure that our presence in the community still remained and that we were taking care of the needs of the community, making sure that the community understood that the church is more than just a building. It is people working together to resolve issues and support one another in difficult times. And we feel like we have accomplished that, but we're not going to rest on our laurels in any way. But we certainly want to continue to grow and continue to impact the community where we have been planted. And again, Fisher Memorial is 137 years old. We're in the same location that we have always been, and we certainly want to make a difference in Durham, and we want to make sure that we are doing our part in the fight against COVID-19.
Thank you, Elder Blake. Let me remind our listeners on the radio, if they want to see the Zoom broadcast, they can go to nccu.edu/roundtable and join us on the Zoom if you like. Elder Blake and Dr. Battle, you both have talked about what you have done in the community, and the history of your churches are well known. I guess the first thing I want to explore is how can we as faith leaders, how do you see that we can combat misinformation? And I want to say this because sometimes the misinformation comes from the faith community. Sometimes it's, we believe in divine healing, God's got it all under control. And if you just pray and trust God, it's going to be all right. All these are good things. But some things you just can't pray away. You have to go get this vaccine. How do you battle? And I'm going to give this to Elder Blake first and then to Dr. Battle. How do you battle misinformation, especially in our faith community?
Well, I think the first thing that we have to do is always make sure of the sources of where we're getting our information. I certainly am in a blessed place because my wife is also in clinical research with Duke University. And so she has a wealth of information that she shares with me related to what is going on with research and things that we should be looking forward to or what we should be looking to obtain. So I think, first of all, your source of information, you have to make sure that you are getting information from the correct sources. The problem that we had early with COVID-19 is that people were getting information and as additional information came, sometimes it appeared as if it were being contradictory to what had been said previously, but it's just an additional amount of information. And what we also have to realize is that in the faith-based community, we as pastors have to be first partakers of the information that we receive. So we can't get information and then not respond to the information that we get, because people are watching us, they're looking at us and looking at us as examples of what we should do. And as I heard you mention, Dr. Birch, that it would be important for us to get vaccinated. One of the things that I did during both of the vaccinations that I did, I took the Pfizer vaccine. And when I did, I posted my vaccination on Facebook so that those who were in the community could see me being vaccinated, which could say to someone who was in question as to whether or not they were going to be vaccinated, that if they could trust me and I would be vaccinated, then they too might likely be vaccinated. So I think we have to know what our areas of influence are, and then we have to make sure that we are sharing information with them that we trust, and the way that we show them that we trust the information that we have received is for us to follow through with what those things are, those guidelines are.
Okay, I wholeheartedly agree with Elder Blake in reference to us being involved in the information itself, because just like he did, I also got the Pfizer vaccine as soon as I possibly could, and then I got the second shot, and then today I got the booster, and also I got the flu shot as well. And like him, my wife is a pharmacist, and she's a doctor of pharmacy. So we deal with a lot of empirical data here at the house as well. And so another thing is important for us to be intentional in terms of getting the knowledge out there. About us having a platform, I'm sure Elder Blake would agree with there, even in our sermons and in our messages, in our Bible teaching, it's important that we integrate that knowledge in to what we're serving the people, and make sure that that we grind it up though, so that they can get it. And I think once they understand the importance of preserving life, which is the scriptures all about, it talks about love your neighbor as yourself. So if we love our neighbors, then certainly we want them to be in good health, and we want them to live. So a lot of those biblical principles that we live by, we just implement them practically, through what we actually do. Another thing that I do is I actually have people to come on, and if people are skeptical about the vaccine, I have Dr. Jensen Hall, who's a frequent visitor to our Zoom and using one of our sessions. And I get the people the opportunity to ask questions. He's the expert. And so whatever their skepticism is, maybe when he answers their question, maybe they'll be a little more further along in terms of actually getting the vaccine, because one of our missions is to actually save life, and so even doing the services that we have, our church holds quite a bit of people, but the maximum amount that we're allowed to come in is 100 people. They must have a mask on. We check temperatures before they come into the service. And then we don't have a choir singing. We may have one or two people, and one person with the mask off at one time, because if you have choir singing, you have droplets all over the place, and people can possibly get the COVID. The same way in, it's the same way out. We have one entry, one exit. We sanitize the church, before and after services, and also during our bi-monthly food giveaway. We try to put flyers in those boxes, so when people come pick up food, they'll have that. So any questions they may have, and getting the knowledge out there, we try to put that on our website as well. And so, like Elder Blake, we must be intentional and getting this information out there, but we have to be the champions. We can't say, y'all go take that hill. We have to go and be willing to be the leaders of that. And so I try to lead by example, and then hopefully, by doing that, others will be encouraged to follow. But keeping that information out there in front of them is important, and not making people, feel bad or stupid, but nudging them along, and letting them know that we care and that we love them. And that's why we want them to, to get the vaccine, because we want to preserve life.
Thank you, Dr. Battle. Dr. Washington has joined us. Dr. Washington, we're glad you made it safe. I'm going to ask you if you will briefly introduce yourself, and then the question that we have put before Elder Blake and Dr. Battle is how do we combat misinformation and support, public health in the faith community?
First, my apologies for being late. I'm traveling and got caught in traffic in a different time zone, but thank you for having me. I'm Jerome Washington, Mount Vernon Baptist Church in Durham, North Carolina. I think one of the things we can do is, let me just say, all of the things I've heard my brothers say, the kinds of things we need to be doing, and just that word intentional keeps coming up. Just keep being intentional, keep informing people of the need, and pointing to the statistics that show what happens when you get the vaccine, and the statistics that show, unfortunately, when you don't get it. Our worship services, the same methods that these brothers are using, we're doing also the same safeguards. But I think it has to be over and over and over said. I heard him mention Dr. Jensen Hall. Dr. Hall must be a globetrotter because he's all over the place informing people. We've had our clinics at the church, as some of these brothers have had, and recently we wrote a grant and secured some home COVID test kits that we distributed to our members, praying they'd never need them. We passed them out at barbershops, beauty parlors, places like that. But whatever we can do to return to some sense of normalcy, and to inform people that the vaccine is here and it's to be used. People say, well, they made it too fast. Well, there's a new flu vaccine made every year because there's a new strain of the flu that comes out every year. So those are the kinds of things we've been doing, and kind of echoing what we've heard our brothers say this evening.
I'm sorry, the church is opening up. Everyone wants to go back inside. Everybody wants to go in. We've been vaccinated. Have any of you opened your doors to have Sunday morning worship, or are you still on virtual? Or Dr. Battle, and then Dr. Washington, then Elder Blake?
Thank you, Dr. Birch. Yes, we opened up on Father's Day. We actually pulled together a health committee and a reopening committee to look at the feasibility of actual opening, and that was the target date, that we put in place. And actually, in doing that, we kind of followed the same guidelines that we did when we actually did the 200 vaccinations when we partnered with Duke. And so we kind of use that same model. So we do in-person service, but we don't allow no more than 100 people, and they have to be social distance. We already have the pews section off with strips and stuff like that. And not only that, we also do Facebook Live and also conference call. So, but we give them the option in terms of what they feel comfortable with. We don't try to force people to come to in-person service if they don't feel comfortable. So there are different, ways that we allow them to chime into the services. And so, that's the way, we do it. We don't, another thing is I do not have meetings at the church. All my meetings are on Zoom, so I try to keep the traffic down in the churches as much as possible. Sunday school is on Zoom. Our church conferences are on Zoom. Everything except just that worship service. And so another benefit to that is that because people are driving less, they are able to save money, and you have less carbon emissions that put into the atmosphere as well. And so there are some benefits there as well. But what I do, or what we do rather, we give people the option, and we give them those options. And so far, that's been working pretty good.
Okay. And before Dr. Washington come, I'm about 3 minutes off, but let me say to our listeners that you're listening to WNCU 90.7 FM live and watching us simulcast on Zoom. And we're talking with our guests, Dr. Jerome Washington, Dr. Cornelius Battle, and Elder James Blake. And we're talking about what faith and COVID-19 has to do with each other. Thank you, and sorry for the interruption, Dr. Washington. You can go ahead.
No problem. Well, we returned to worship in August. We began a slow walk back the last 2 weekends of July. We had an outdoor concert and then an outdoor worship service. And then we went into the sanctuary on the first Sunday in August. And we've been with limited seating, with the virtual platforms on YouTube and Facebook. We've been able to do those, fortunately. And as an addendum, I do not see our congregation ever not having a virtual platform, because the reach is much broader.
Elder Blake.
Yes, thank you. So our story is just slightly different, because actually we never were without worship service. We immediately, at the third Sunday in March of 2020, went into a virtual platform for worship service, which included a praise and worship team, the musicians, and our media team that was always there. And throughout 2020, there were people that would come into the congregation, a small group of people that would come and share in the worship experience that has continued to grow. We certainly communicate to everyone that our doors have never closed, but we were always in the position where we were always going to protect the people who came to our worship services. So as Dr. Battle said, we were taking temperatures when people came in. We were collecting names, telephone numbers, so that if there ever was an issue, we could trace who was there on any given day. And we would always have a ledger that we could communicate with the county health department to say, if you need to do contact tracing, here are the people who were here. And these were also the people who were in the building on that day. So we continue to do that. And we have been very blessed in that we have not had an issue at Fisher Memorial related to COVID-19. And we've had some events that we've had, but any of those events that we've done them outside. And so we've had them spread out on the black top and on the green top on our property. And what we have been able to accomplish with that is having people still masked, but outside where there is more space. And so there is less likelihood that there will be a transmission from any droplets or any of those things on the inside. And so that has been the way that we have gone through the last year and a half as it relates to COVID and activities in the church. Again, we are very pleased to be able to say that we have continued to have worship service. We are thankful for Facebook Live and YouTube Live. We are thankful for our prayer line, or our free conference call line, that allows us to communicate with our parishioners as well as those who would listen or watch us. And so we too do our Bible church school. Our denomination doesn't call it Sunday school, we call it Bible church school. And so we have Bible church school on Monday nights, and it is done through Zoom. We have morning prayer every morning at 7 o'clock a.m., from 7 a.m. to 7:30 a.m. to 7:30 a.m. On our prayer line free conference call. So you can go to our website and all those places, you can get that information. But that is how we have continued to be engaged in the community and with our congregation.
Blake, and there are 2 points I want to go back to, but first, you keep talking about prayer. Um,
Well, the Bible says men ought to always pray.
But I'm gonna pray. So if I'm gonna pray and trust God, and I think we've all heard this. And Elder Blake, you're smiling. You know where I think you probably know where I'm going. If you're gonna worry, what's the saying? If you're gonna worry, don't pray.
Don't pray.
And if you're gonna pray, don't worry.
Right.
So if I'm praying and COVID vaccine is there and somebody else has gotten COVID, but I'm going to trust God to heal me because I believe in divine healing. And I don't, the Bible tells me that my body is a temple. Why am I going to put this stuff in my body? Elder Blake, Dr. Washington, and then Dr. Babb.
So I believe in the power of prayer. I believe that prayer changes people and it changes situations. I also believe that God has given us scientists. He has given us researchers who know what they have seen in the past. They know technology of today and of the future, and they are working diligently to make sure that we have what we need to combat these viruses that are popping up in our society. The same people who will talk about, I need divine healing. This is a pet peeve of mine, is that we will have people who will have hypertension and will pop a pill so that they can eat some pork. We have those things that are going on in our society and in our churches. But I believe that if we would apply the same principles of if I'm diabetic and I need to take insulin, then I will take my insulin. If I have hypertension and I need to take a blood pressure medication, then I will take that because it is what I need to live. And I want everyone to understand that if we have a vaccine that is combating against death and hospitalization, then we have to do everything that we can do to ensure that we don't die or we have to be hospitalized and put on a ventilator because we did not take a vaccination. We've been vaccinated for years. We didn't know all the constituents of any vaccination that we've ever put into our bodies. We're trusting God. So I'm trusting God that He has equipped these doctors, these researchers, to know what is going to be effective against this coronavirus. And I'm trusting God that He's going to take care of me and He's going to protect me from any adverse effects of that vaccination.
I can't follow that any more clearer than Elder Blake has said already. I'm always saying to people, I said to members of our congregation, you don't know what they put in that Popeye's chicken sandwich, but you stood in line an hour and a half to get it. You walk around the state fair with this huge turkey leg. You don't know what they put in there, but you eat it. Let's not trivialize the importance of scientific research. God is not going to do anything for us that we cannot do for ourselves. He has given us minds to think and will to act. And yes, this body, and it is ours to keep it safe and healthy the best way we can. And he does not call, he calls on us to have faith, but much of what we're hearing is reckless faith. And it's as if someone has come up with this idea that they're going to put God to the test so that they can go around bragging. I didn't get the shot and God protected me. Well, you know, maybe he spared you because of your foolishness. You know, the scripture talks about how he winked at them in their ignorance. Maybe he's just winking at you now.
Dr. Battle?
I agree with my brothers as well. And I think Brother Washington mentioned something earlier when he first came on about the statistics and actually, you know, going by what the science say. You know, the science tells us that 98% of the people that are dying from the COVID are those who have not taken the vaccine. And so, you know, common sense, or sometimes common sense ain't always common, but anyway, common sense would tell me that, hey, if I want to preserve my life, I'm going with the statistics to where those who are getting vaccinated are those who have a higher probability of living. That's common sense. And as science continues to progress, you know, and people say they don't have faith, but everybody have faith. You know, you go to restaurants, and you sit down at a table you never sat down at before. How you know that chair wasn't glued together, but you believe it's going to hold you? You never sat in it before. You get on that airplane and you travel to various destinations. You believe that's going to get you there. So everybody has faith, you know, and science means to know, you know, and 1 + 1 is always 2. And so, you know, a lot of stuff, you know, people, you know, I think a lot of times are skeptical because, you know, they don't really want to actually believe or to do the research or listen, or they're set in their ways and they get people that know absolutely nothing about the vaccine and they begin to listen to them. You know, listen to the people that know something about it. You know, people are dying. You know, and since people have getting the vaccine, people are now living. That's empirical data that's verifiable. And so, you know, I think that more or less speaks for itself.
Thank you. Dr. Battle, you mentioned earlier about being about intentionality. How do we keep this, or how do we, and Dr. Washington even touched on it, how do we be intentional in our faith with COVID? This is something that we've not dealt with. It's been over almost 2 years now. How do we be intentional in getting our people to understand the necessity of constantly taking care of ourselves? Because not only does this brings up another point in intentionality, because we were talking about COVID, we're talking about the vaccines, but COVID has a way of messing with our mental health. So if we're not intentional on paying attention to the vaccines and what we need to do, then that mental health aspect becomes a problem. So how do we get people to be intentional in their faith and in their walk to do what's right?
Several things. Number one is that we must be consistent. You know, usually Monday through Friday, I do 50 push-ups each morning. I do that intentionally. And so I know if I don't do it, I'm not going to feel as good as if I didn't do it. And so there is going to be some, you know, some effort that I actually have to put into that. The laws of physics say it takes 2,000 pounds of pressure to move the empty box called 1 inch. But once you get it to rolling, it only takes 200 pounds of pressure to keep it going. And so as we continue to, preach, talk about, intentionally getting this information out there, whatever venue we are in each and every day, even if just one person, take the vaccine as a result of us getting this information out there, it's worth it. So we must put forth the effort on a continuous basis. That means that there's something that is required of us. We also must be disciplined, to do it on a consistent basis. So the effort must be there, and the intentionality must be there. The effort must be there, and and we leave the rest to the people, because the Creator gave all of us a choice. We can't force anybody to do anything, but I believe that that the more avenues we have out there for them to learn, for them to get information, to nudge them along, not try to force them to answer their questions over time, as we continue to, to apply the intentionality or pressure, whatever you call it, then eventually, others will get vaccinated. And I know, because there are some people in my church that were skeptical about getting the vaccine. And so we just kept nudging them along, giving them information, and then finally they got it, and so that intentionality, keep that effort going. That's how we do it. We never give up. Each and every day is a new day to hopefully encourage someone else to get the vaccine. But if we don't do anything, we are guaranteed to fail. But if we do something, there's always a possibility to succeed.
Thank you, Dr. Badham. We're going to go to Dr. Washington and Elder Blake. But first, let me say to our listeners, you're listening to WNCU 90.7 FM live and watching a live simulcast on Zoom. We're talking with our guests, Dr. Jerome Washington, Elder James Blake, and Dr. Cornelius Battle. And our discussion is on what faith has to do with COVID-19. Thank you all for joining us. If you want to join, if you're listening on the radio and want to join us on Zoom, please go to nccu.edu/roundtable and join us on the Zoom as well. Dr. Washington, to you, sir.
I think one of the things that helps in congregations is if we have created a climate of health awareness or healthiness. Dr. Battle mentioned his fitness regime. I don't embrace that kind of discipline for myself. You can see that if you're looking at me, but that's another discussion. But to create this climate of encouraging our members toward fitness or to healthy eating. At least twice in the last few years at our church, we've visited Rick Warren's Daniel plan that encouraged a balance of devotion and exercise and healthy eating and prayer. That kind of climate helps, because unfortunately, we're worrying about what the vaccine might do to us, but much of it we're doing ourselves by not eating well, not exercising. These temples the Lord gave us, we're not treating them right. So we're fearing a vaccine, but we're also damaging and creating damage to our bodies ourselves. So I think creating that climate of a healthy congregation helps, shapes the minds of people. And I think particularly as African-American congregations, we can do well to be very intentional about that at the number of repasts we have and what we have at the repast and how often we have the repast and things like that.
Dr. Blake.
Certainly agree with my brothers. And I think one of the keys to our intentionality is to also lift up this concept of discipline. We often do not want to be disciplined We don't want to follow any instruction. And part of that then gets us to a place where we want to rebel against a recommendation, because we know as pastors, we stand and we decree the word of God to congregants Sunday after Sunday, telling them what the word of God says for their lives and encouraging them to live that which is preached and what we live. But oftentimes, if that is in opposition to what our flesh wants to do, then people are more apt to gratify their flesh than to discipline themselves and say no to what may be going on in their body. So as Dr. Washington says, we have to be mindful that we've got to take care of our temples, our bodies, because when we have underlying health conditions, things like vaccinations and side effects of vaccinations show up very differently in us than they do in others. And we have to also be mindful as we are doing this and promoting health. We also should promote clinical research in our churches, because clinical research does more than just have us serve at the forefront of a drug discovery, but it also can lead to some people having even greater health care because of a clinical trial, and they may go to the doctor more frequently. They may get drugs that other people may not have access to, and those things are helpful in the clinical research arena for them having data that is tied directly to African Americans. So we need to make sure that we are intentional, not just in a vaccine, but throughout the entire medical community, to make sure that we are present at every stage of drug discovery, so that when we are in a situation where a drug is needed, there is data that says this is how this drug works in African Americans.
Thank you, Elder Blake. Thank you all. I want to switch here for a moment and ask, when all of this began, as many of you know, we ended up being on the tail end of everything. How do we get policymakers, whether it's through Duke, through UNC, whether it's city council or the Durham County commissioners, how do we get folks to understand that if they want our community involved, that they need to deal with our pastors, not after something happens, but when it begins? How do we get them to understand, and what do we say to them to say, look, don't bring, what's your axiom? If you're not at the table, you're going to be on it. So how do we get folks to make sure that, what do we say to them? Dr. Washington, then Dr. Battle, then Elder Blake.
I think it behooves us as leaders to be aware of the events of our day and create our own networks so that when things are not coming our way, we can go directly to the people and make enough noise and demand that they come our way. You know very well that the vaccines were very slow coming to the African American community. And a number of us, in fact, all of us on this call were saying, use our churches. They are safe spaces. People will trust going there. And it worked. But we cannot be an afterthought. And we cannot just be an addendum or a footnote to a staff meeting. We have to go demanding that there be relevant engagement with our community, because good, bad, or otherwise, even people who don't go to the Black church, in the Black community, there's a certain amount of trust in the Black church.
I agree with that 100%. I think as pastors, as we network together and come together, because they understand that we have a constituency behind us, that is important. And once again, it must be intentional in terms of whatever's coming down the pike. And once we share that information with each other, and then we come together and we put pressure, as Dr. Washington said, on the so-called powers to be, to say, hey, people trust the church. You already have a built-in comfort level facility where people will come to. Most of the churches are holding at least 200 or more people. So there's a natural flow. So why not bring the vaccine there? And I think a lot of times it's politics to a certain degree, but I think that they know. But as Dr. Washington said, we need to put pressure on them to know that, hey, we are watching you and we are here and we are going to be on top of it. Just like I went to the Marbury trial down in Brunswick, Georgia. They was talking about how many pastors do she have? We was like, we're gonna show you. So close to 300 or 400 pastors showed up, and I think that show of being unified let them know that, hey, they're watching us, and we have to be on good behavior. Even if we don't want to do what's right, we gotta do what's right because we feel that pressure. And so I think being vigilant, sharing information, and understanding that we work together as a unified body of brothers and African American pastors, then we are able to maximize our potential as it relates to making sure that our community, are receiving the resources, the benefits, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's more or less my take on it. I just kind of agree with Dr. Washington on that. That's how we do it.
And in line with that, Dr. Birch, I think it is imperative that we have one voice coming from the faith-based community, where we can collectively come together and decide what our message is going to be, and everyone is speaking the same language. When we came together to say that our churches would be available for vaccinations, the hands were being raised for pastors who would say, yes, you can come to my church. You can utilize my facility, because we knew that it was important to our community for them to see vaccinations happening at a place that they trusted. And so from people that they trusted. So what we have to always make sure that we're doing is we have to be a part of the pre-meeting. The pre-meeting meaning the ministers, the pastors, we're going to have to get together and say, what is it that we want from this? And then we go to power and say, this is what we want. And these are the number of people that we have with us. And if we are not served, then there are some repercussions to us not being served. And then we know that power will respond when you have numbers who say, if you don't, especially if they're elected officials, if it's city council and you go to them and you have 500 or 600 people who are standing with you and they know that it is an election year, it changes the tide of how they are going to decide about something if you have some numbers. So we've got to make sure that we are unified and we're presenting one unified body with a central theme of what it is that we want, and saying that we are going to work to get that, and we're not going to stop until we get it.
You're on mute, Dr.
I'm
Bird.
sorry, I was on mute. Elder Blake, how do we and how do we unify our pastors?
Well, you would ask me that. Well, I think one of the biggest detriments to us is that we often don't know one another outside of the pulpit. And if we would ever get to the place where I am not threatened by Dr. Battle, nor am I threatened by Dr. Washington, and we actually become Cornelius and Jerome and James, then we then have a true relationship. And out of relationship, we can then work together where our egos are in check, and it doesn't matter how many members either one of us has, we're going to work for the common good of everyone. So I think it starts with, we've got to have relationships outside of Sunday morning pulpit relationships, beyond exchanging services with one another, but being connected in a community. Dr. Washington and I we are a block apart. We are on the same street, Piedmont. He's at one end on Roxborough, I'm at the other end, Fayetteville, and we can do things together. And when we do things together, we are impacting an entire community. If we do things separately, we divide a community and they have to make a choice as to which one of these things they're going to attend. We've got to be intentional. We keep saying intentional, but we've got to be intentional about having relationships with each other so that we can be more effective when we do things.
Dr. Washington. Dr. Washington, same question.
I can only say amen to what Elder Blake has said. Too often, and it's not just clergy, but too often in all of our gatherings as African Americans, we're too busy, we're too concerned about who's going to get credit, who's going to get the photo op, as opposed to who's going to benefit from it. You know, my mind goes back to a phone call, I guess a year and a half ago, when, you know, Brother Birch, Blake, we were on the phone with someone from the state health department, and he continued to say, we want to bring it to the Black community, but we can't find anybody to partner with. We want to bring it to the Black community, we can't find anybody. So wait a minute, you got 5, 6 pastors on this call. Somewhere along the way, we have to realize that one voice doesn't always have to be our voice, and it doesn't always have to be at our place. You know, no matter where it is, it will benefit our community. Egos have to be put aside. It's as simple as that, for the betterment of our people. You know, saving souls is the core of our curriculum. Saving the community is extracurricular, but it is just as vital to the life of our congregations, because if our communities fall apart, our congregations fall apart. And the people in the community feel a certain kind of pleasant kind of way when they realize the church has invested in them. Even though they may never enter our doors, they know whether or not the church is interested in them and genuinely concerned about their well-being.
Dr. Bell, I'm going to come to you, and before I do it, it's going to be the same question, but I want you all to put in your mind, because I want to touch base on this mental health piece. And so I want you to, you know, the Bible says the double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. And I think, you know, for most of us, and I said this on the radio Sunday, we're used to singing Cousin Ray walking down the railroad tracks, and you know, somebody say, well, what's wrong with him? Well, you know, he's special. He's special. He'll be all right. No, just leave him alone. He know what he's doing. He'll be all right. COVID has brought another level of mental health situations in our community, and so I want to explore that. I'm trying to eat up 3 minutes, Dr. Battle, before I get to you, because I don't want to rush you. So, because I'm going to have to take the station break. But 3 minutes, Dr. Battle, on the question that I had asked about working together.
I'll do what I can. I agree with the brothers. I think of, the churches, operating as a team. You have various players with different skill sets, but at the same time, we operate as a team. And when we see ourselves that way, then whatever the need is or what the needs are, whatever facility may be in a particular context to most efficiently address that particular need, then I think we should rally, around that church or churches, so that I think Dr. Washington said it, so that the needs of the people will be met. And so the key thing is to meet the needs of the people. And so as we see ourselves as enablers of meeting the needs of the people, and each and every day that we wake up, that hey, the more needs that are met, because you have gentrification going on, in Durham, and housing and shootings and all that kind of stuff. There are a plethora of problems, And so, but as we come together and dialogue, come to a common consensus, and then implement, and we are unified as a team, that is so important, because then we'll be much more effective that way. But I agree with Elder Blake. When we come out, we're coming out with one voice, because if we got different voices, the people get confused. But if we are speaking the same language, if we have the same mission, if the people know that we're unified, then they will feel competent and confident and assured that we have their best interests at heart. And that teamwork and the relationship building is important as well. I think we can do more of that, but hopefully when this COVID dies down, we can do a lot more of that. You guys are welcome to come into the house and play some pool sometimes, and Jerome, maybe you can teach me how to play golf. But anyway, that is that's those types of things that we do, I think is important. And then when the community see us being in harmony and in relationship with each other and being unified, then I feel that they will feel more secure that, hey, these ministers, they got our backs and we can trust them because they are working together and there are no big eyes and little U's.
Thank you, Dr. Battle. You have been listening to the WNCU 90.7 FM, Durham, North Carolina, and we are speaking with Dr. Jerome Washington, Dr. Cornelius Battle, and Elder James Blake. What's COVID and faith have to do with each other, and how does faith impact COVID? I did say that I wanted to touch that mental health piece. I'm going to go to Dr. Battle. How are you dealing with mental health in your church? And then Dr. Washington, then Elder Blake.
One of the ways that I deal with mental health is, is through the messages, the sermon sometimes. I think the month of October was Domestic Violence Month. And so I preached a sermon entitled Behind Closed Doors. And it dealt with, Tamar, who was sexually abused by her half brother. And so, those types of things in dealing with that intentionally through our messages helps the congregation to understand that, there is, mental illnesses and sexual abuse and those kinds of things that goes on, and that's something that the churches need to deal with. I also through Bible studies, and I also encourage people to read. There's a book that I highly recommend. It's entitled Grace for the Injured Self. It's by Heinz Cohort. And then there's another one in terms of dealing with, relationship and things like that. It's entitled Getting the Love You Want and Keeping the Love You Have. So I encourage people to read, books from a psychotherapeutic standpoint. Those people are professionals in those areas, and they deal with childhood wounds and trauma and things like that. So we integrate that within our ministries as well. So it must be intentional and not be a taboo. And so as ministers and pastors, when we put that on the radar screen and deal with those issues, then people will feel more comfortable, in talking about what they're going through, the trauma that they're going through, the childhood wounds they're dealing with, the mental illness that they're dealing with. And we pray with them, and they always have an open door policy, and we refer them, to psychotherapists, and not let it be a taboo. It must something that we put on the radar to let people know that we're concerned about that. I think someone mentioned about, you see a lot of time people out there begging for money, a lot of veterans, they do it because they have a lot of times they don't want to get the housing. They just want to kind of be independent, and I keep a little change on them. I give them $1 and then I give them a card or something like that. But that's a lot of mental illness that's in churches and families, childhood wounds that people have to deal with that goes unmet. And a lot of times it come out in negative ways. And sometimes these people are on our ministries or in our boards and in leadership positions and things like that. And so we have to address it so that those things are not projected onto other people. So we have to deal with those kinds of things. All of us, have some issues from time to time with things, maybe that we need to address our own mental health. And so that must be intentional as well, instead of being, swept or kept in the closet. We need to bring it out and put it out there on the table and deal with it. And that's how I said before, that Ghanaian proverb that said, he who conceals his disease cannot be cured. So we have to deal with it, and we come together and have those forums on mental illness, and our people have to deal with it. The trauma of slavery and trauma and the consistent, negativity that we have to deal with over the airwaves, and watching this trial, Ahmaud Arbery being killed, and the defense talking about the dirty toenails. When Black folks hear that, to them, that's trauma for me. You're talking about a person who's already dead. You see, those types of things, and we need to, because other people are feeling that way too. But if we don't address it and bring it out, then we can't deal with it. So I think it's very important. We have to intentionally keep that on the radar screen. Hope I wasn't too long.
I'm listening to him, but my mind is just racing, because I'm thinking about, first of all, in the African American community, there was a day when one was affirmed in the African American community. You were a domestic, or you were a field worker, a tractor driver, whatever it was, Monday through Friday, but Sunday you put on your best and you became deacon so-and-so and choir member so-and-so. And many of us don't realize that was therapeutic for our people. We've kind of lost that affirmation in worship like we used to have. I heard Dr. Bennett talk about his preaching. COVID has made me concentrate on a different kind of sermon each Sunday morning. because all of us are pushing our way through. I read an article a few months ago that talked about how clergy, 1,700 clergy persons a month are walking away. It's too much for them. The stress of it all, the trauma of having to try and help those who are grieving, those who are hurting. I shared with Elder Blake today. I'm not wired for this kind of impersonal kind of pastorate that COVID is making us do now, where we can't touch people, we can't hug people. But mental illness, next thing I want to touch on, mental illness is real, and our people must come to grips with the fact that sometimes it takes prayer and the therapist. I will never forget, I guess about 6 years ago or so, there was a family was dealing with all kinds of things. And you know, after coming to me about it for the fourth or fifth time, I said, you know, I'm going to refer you all to someone. I think you need some professional help, because first of all, as pastors, if we're not careful, it will drain us. And they became offended. She became offended, this mother, and left the church. It didn't change the problem. It impacted even greater the problem. But this matter of dysfunctional families and trauma in families and post-traumatic stress, it is real. And yes, I believe in the power of prayer. I'm a product of prayer, but I also know, as we said with the vaccine earlier, that there are therapists who can help us through these ills. And the more we talk about it, the more we show the need, it benefits our people.
That question, Elder Blake.
So several years ago, I coined the phrase, that suppression does not equal deliverance. And so often we are taught in and through church to suppress hurts and experiences, and somehow we have been delivered because we don't speak about it, we never give attention to it. And what that has done for us is cause our mental state to be compromised, because we've never dealt with the hurt, the pain that we have experienced over our lives generationally, and even in our current living. One of the things that I think as it relates to mental health is that we don't take seriously mental health because we don't take seriously our physical health. As Dr. Washington noted earlier, you know, we cannot continue to have fried chicken and potato salad and macaroni and cheese and all the starches that we would have at a dinner at our church, and then say that we are concerned about the whole person. And likewise, when people have had traumatic experiences in their lives, we cannot say to them, just pray and everything will be all right. I will share with you all, at the end of 2017, there were 3 very traumatic instances or incidences that happened in my life in a 3-month period. I lost my mother-in-law in November, I lost my mother in December, and I lost my stepfather in January. Those things had an impact on me and my ability every day to get up and function normally. those are impactful instances in a person's life. And I certainly had friends who would try to encourage me, but they didn't necessarily have the tools to help me process through what I was going through, allow me to own the feelings that I was experiencing, and then put me back together so that I could walk out of an office and still function. So we have to promote some counseling for our congregants, whatever their situations that they're going through. There is someone other than us as pastors that they can talk to. Sometimes it is a need to pay a copay in order to get some help for the situations that you are going through. And that processing is good for us, because if we go through the process, then we are also in a better position to share our process with someone else by encouraging them to say, if this is going on with you, yes, I can pray with you, but I also want to refer you to some help that is going to help you not just in this situation, but will help you long term.
And to that, with mental health, COVID did not bring this about, but it highlighted the problem. When we were trying to get vaccines in the arms of our community, and we were trying to get them set up in our churches, and I was going to Dr. Washington, and he said, bring it to Mount Vernon, and Dr. Battles, and bring it to Ebenezer, and you, Elder Blake, likewise to Fisher. And at that time, I think we all just knew, we just got to get these shots. We already knew there were 2 shots. You get one, and then 30 days later, 28 days later, you get the second one. And then within a 3 to 6 month period, someone said, you're going to need a booster. Elder Blake, I'm going to send this to you first. What did that do to our community? Because they just thought, we're ready for the Johnson one and done. What did that do to our community? And how do we get them to understand, yes, that booster is necessary? Go ahead.
Well, I think initially there was just shock, because we had the idea, and it had been presented, that there is a 2-shot for Pfizer, 2-shot for Moderna, 1 shot for Johnson & Johnson, and antibodies will be made. We'll have the antibodies. We're good. We won't have to worry about COVID. But again, as science continues to progress and you understand some of the integral details of the immune system, immunity wanes over a period of time. And so we have to make sure that if we're getting new strands of this COVID-19, that there is some protection against that. So I think when people really began to take a look and say, I know every year there is a different strand of flu that we are vaccinated for, and you can put COVID-19 in a similar situation, then you can say, okay, we're going to have to do something, because as Delta variant came, and then there was additional variants that were being recognized, we knew you would know that there has to be something that is going to combat that. So what we have to do is present to people what we as faith believers can say. We have to be patient. We have to understand that this is a marathon and it is not a sprint. We have to learn that we're living with COVID-19, and that may be the reality. And we just have to now figure out, how do we navigate that and protect ourselves in the best way possible? And if booster is what we need once every 6 months or once a year, then that just becomes our norm, and we go and we get our booster and we continue to live our lives. but we've got to understand that there is no miracle drug that is going to eradicate this, and we never have to deal with it again. And so we're just going to have to really take a look at that and say, here is what we're dealing with. What is the best way for me to have a normal life? And if booster is what it is, I'm in line for booster.
Washington. Same question, Dr. Washington.
You know, I'm in agreement with Elder Blake, and thinking of I guess I won't say how long ago, but I remember being 4 or 5 years old, standing in line, getting measles, mumps, rubella, you know, polio, all those, you know, at the same time, just trying to protect myself. The world is going to be different. So we either fasten our seatbelts and ride along, or we could get left behind. I'm believing God, yes. And I'm believing that God is working with science. It's as simple as that. I'm just believing that out of this, and we've seen it. I mean, these pastors on the line, we've seen the glory of all the ugliness of the pandemic. We see the glory of God coming out. All of us are televangelists now, you know. Our Bible studies, our Sunday morning services are going into places it never would have gone before. And I see God's hand working on the upside of this, in the midst of all of that ugliness. Let's face it, we're the Church of Jesus Christ. And the Church of Jesus Christ always gets stronger when she is persecuted and when she's oppressed.
Thank you, Doc. We are listening to WNCU 90.7 FM live and watching a live simulcast on Zoom, talking with our guests, Dr. Jerome Washington, Elder James Blake, and Dr. Cornelius Battle about faith and COVID-19. Dr. Battle, to you, sir. And I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I want to go to something Dr. Washington actually said, and then we'll go back down to him about grants. You know, how important is it for us to write grants? We're a church. We're, you know, all churches are not 501c3s. All are not nonprofits. But how important is it to make sure that we have the funds and the money necessary to do what is needed for our community, especially during this time of COVID?
To be quite honest with you, I haven't actually written a grant at this point, but that is on the radar in terms of being able to you know, get funding for other areas that we see a need for. By us being a nonprofit, there are dollars out there, you know, for various things if we are improving the community. I think the county commissioners, I think it's important for us to know what those dollars are and how they're actually allocated, more or less. And there is grant money out there. So, you know, I think through tithes and offerings, we can do certain things, but through grant, we can do even more. So that's my take on it. So I have to pass this off to somebody else that have actually written grants, and they can give you a better practical you know, application as it relates to that. But that's on our radar.
Dr. Washington.
Yes, I've written particularly for after-school tutorial. Before politics got involved, we had a very strong after-school tutorial program. When I think of the church and grants, I am seeing that as a way, pastors mentioned it, for us to do things in the community, for the community, that our tithes and our offerings just won't allow us to do. It allows us to do community-based things all across the country. There are congregations who are, because of their nonprofits, are building affordable housing, having health clinics, having recreational centers, supplying to the communities through their nonprofit grant writing efforts, the things the community needs that the church wants and the church envisions, but its regular finances will not allow it to do. So I think it's a positive thing when we use those efforts to better our community.
So I certainly do agree that grants can be beneficial to churches and programming. I also believe that grants in partnership with a North Carolina Central University, Duke University, or even Durham Technical Institute can be beneficial to both the community and to the church. And it creates a partnership between those entities that helps the people to see the church as not just a place to go on Sunday, but a place that is connected to the community throughout the course of the week, whether it's with our youth, especially if we're connecting with universities, gives us an inroad to those universities and helps us to be more relevant as a church to a younger generation, a younger demographic. So I think all of those things in conjunction will help us not only as a church, but will help us as a community organization to have our fingers on the pulse of a changing and new generation.
Thank you. Now, as we begin to wind down very quickly, to all three of you, where do we go from here? What's our take on what we've seen in the past 21, 22 months now? What do we do now? We met, we talked, we prayed. Where do we go from here? Let's go in order. Dr. Battle, Elder Blake, Dr. Washington.
We keep pushing. We keep pushing. We keep the information out there. We keep doing what we're doing until every person in Durham and vicinity is vaccinated. We keep the lines open for people to ask questions about the vaccine. We keep meeting need. We make ourselves available. We become compassionate listeners. Work together as a team. I think we need to every so often do consistent forums like this as we communicate and bring more people in. And we just keep our hands on the pulse of what's going on so that we can meet the needs of the people and as servants and just keep on doing what we're doing intentionally.
So in agreement with Dr. Battle, I still say that as we are continuing to fight this fight that is COVID, we have to also have an eye towards the future and anything that may be coming down the pike. What this, I believe, has taught me is that as we preach and teach that the activities and things in our lives don't catch God by surprise, we have to make sure that whatever is coming does not catch us by surprise. So we have to really look and say, what do we do next? As Dr. Burt says, where do we go from here? We have to look at if this is a health disparity that we are dealing with. How do we prevent a health disparity in the next crisis that comes in the African-American community? What have we learned that we can now put together and make sure that at the onset of anything that is coming up, we are at the table, that we are speaking to powers that be, and the funds that are needed for our community are made available to our community early, not late, where we are not getting crumbs, but we're getting our fair slice of the funds and we're getting that early not late. So I think it causes us to really look beyond the moment and say, what do we need to do to ensure that we are ready to be on the forefront of whatever is coming next?
Yeah, I think the thrust of our going forward, as these brothers have said, the thrust is being proactive and God knows, being willing to reshape the template or throw the template away on a moment's notice. I guess for the first 3 or 4 months, some of us were just kind of making it up as we went because we didn't know what to do, because it was just an effort to try and hold our people together. But I think what this has taught us is that from a health standpoint, from a community interaction standpoint, from a worship and worship style standpoint, that we got too comfortable. And COVID has made us uncomfortable. But I dare say it has also made many of us more effective in what we do.
Thank you, Dr. Washington. Thank you, Elder James Blake and Dr. Battle. There is a question from Miss Blue for you, Dr. Battle, about summarize again how your church prepared to begin having service back in the church. Unfortunately, I know we won't make that because we're winding down and we are on NCCU's time. But Ms. Blue, and if it's okay with Dr. Battle, if you will reach out to Leatrice Martin and she can get you in touch with Dr. Battle so he can answer your question. I want to thank North Carolina Central University, WNCU 90.7. We want to thank Duke University Health Center, and everyone involved, the African American COVID Task Force, known as AACT Plus, which I am a member of, very proud member, and thank everyone for what you have done. Please be safe, and please remember and put it on your calendars that December 4th at the Fisher Memorial United Holy Church from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. There will be a free over-the-counter medication giveaway. And our goal is to give away 1,000 bags of medication valued between $90 to $100. And we also will have access for you to receive prescription medications sent to your home for 1 year at no cost. And we were going to be between the Bishop Memorial United Holy Church and Dr. Washington's Church, Mount Vernon, which are right there on the same Piedmont place. Thank you all for your time. It's now 8:30, and I don't want to get in trouble with WNCU. So good night, be blessed, and stay safe. God bless. Thank you, Dr. Washington, Dr. Blake, Dr. Battle.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.